management strategies, or if you will, the interventions that have been used or are currently being used to continue enhancing conservation of the threatened mammals. And when you look at most of the interventions that we already mentioned, most of those interventions more or less applies also to most of these other species. But because mammals are also considered to be very charismatic, they are very elaborate interventions that have been are being tried and continue to be tried. Is the case also with the terrestrial ecosystem. When you look at most of the interventions that we are using for threatened species, such as the elephants, rhinos, among other threatened species, they cut across in terms of the technology that they use. Only that when it comes to marine mammals, you will notice that most of them are customized for marine mammals. But before we proceed, I just wanted to bring to your attention a communication I made, I think yesterday, regarding a survey that is being conducted by a certain Kenyan PhD students who requested that I share. I share it with you, with our students. I think have most of you looked at that link? Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, please just create time. It doesn't take long, just to respond to a few questions. I think they're just she's just trying to look at the gender inclusion of in the marine science. So just respond to those few questions that on that Mange survey, and probably it's also a learning process, just to also educate you a little bit on how you can actually with this pandemic, it's still possible to continue conducting research remotely, just like we are learning also remotely here. It's possible to engage different people and allow them to answer to your questions. For those who are doing social surveys, for example, and you want data on questionnaire, this is actually a platform that you can actually use, and therefore, when you participate in such a survey, you also learn one or two things, because learning is continuous all the time, and therefore, just appreciate that and look at and answer those questions. This is a person I also do not know. I mean, I know she's a Kenyan, and she's doing her PhD, but we interact with people even remotely, like now, what we are doing now. So I think I left where we were looking at one of the strategies that is being used to continue conserving these marine mammals. And one of those strategies is the application. Generally, there is so much adoption, or rather there is so much application of technology. But there are various forms of technology that have been used. And by the way, you remind me, all this information is actually on you remind me, just in case I forget, I need to share that a publication, if you have not come across it, that is looking at all these issues, particularly focusing on marine mammals. So application of biologging and telemetry technology. So when you look at that figure, you will notice that there is a, you can actually see a seal that you have here at the bottom left. And when you look keenly, you will notice that on that seal, there is a gadget that is actually attached to it. And this is the technology that you're talking about. In the terrestrial ecosystem, this is a very common also technology among elephants and rhinos and most of these large mammals. It's actually popularly referred as tagging. But over time, technology have changed, and there are many applications of different forms of technology. So when you talk of biologging basically refers to use of animal born electronic tags. You use tags to record data about individual and their environment. On the other hand, when biotelemetry technology is actually used in such that there is remote transmission. There is remote transmission of data when tags cannot be recovered. So when you tag these animals, you may not have the privilege of having that animal back to remove these tags, to remove these tag that you have attached to that animal so that you can go and download. So the use of these two technology, biologging and telemetry, is a combination of technology such that once you have the privilege of attaching that tag to an animal, you can continue getting information about that particular animal for as long as that animal is for as long as that tag is not detached. And even when it is detached, you'll actually be able to tell. So the combination of those two technologies allows you to get information about certain animals. So biologging devices, as it is, provide a suite of data useful for marine conservation. So this is a technology that can be used on any marine mammal, and not necessarily just marine mammals. That's why I'm saying most of these strategies can be applied among other threatened species, such as turtles and sharks and the like. But in as far as the marine mammals is concerned, these biologging devices are attached to animals, and they provide data useful for their conservation. For example, what you have on this map is a telemetry device deployed on a gray seal in the northern South Northern Sea. And this gadget records, transmit data on their location. So it can actually, you can actually tell where is this particular animal at any one moment. That way, you'll be able to know that is it still alive, and which habitats is it using, and how often is it using certain habitats. Because as you know, for example, as seals are known to inhabit also the shores a lot. So they can migrate between the shores and the sea. And therefore, when you have an animal with a gadget like this, and these animals moves in families, you'll be able to actually deceive a lot of, or rather get a lot of information about that particular animal. So biologging has developed to facilitate data collection from all marine mammals, among other animals around the globe. So such data and associated analytical tools have provided very useful information for marine mammals, including inference of important foraging areas. Where are these animals feeding? Where are they? Do they have particular breeding grounds? Do they have particular habitat where they forage or they prey, or where they utilize habitat for various needs? So beside that, we also mentioned that the other technology that is also being used is the application of what we call habitat preference modeling technology. So this technology is not very different from tagging and biologging technology. Only that, in this case, we'll actually be modeling based on the data that we'll have collected, probably for so long, about a certain animal in form of tagging and telemetry. It's possible to actually use the same data and model it. It will be much cheaper because you'll have known the trends in which animals behave. So modeling technology is also coming in handy in assisting in conservation of marine mammals. So habitat preference modeling technology aims at quantifying the link between the species preference and the abundance and environmental variables or covariates. So for mammals, for marine mammals, the modeled relationship are often used to predict the distribution of the animals, of the marine mammals in the sea. So that the predicted distribution are used to identify the priority areas for conservation for management purposes. When you look at this figure basically shows you the location of the whales that were tracked using a satellite radio tags, meaning you use this to tag the animals, just like the same technology that I was mentioning, biologging and telemetry. So these tags or satellite monitored radio tags are deployed on whales. In this case, this is a particular that was looking at the location of blue whale tracked using these satellite monitored radio tags between the year 1994 to 2008. So you can see it's a long-term data that is transmitted over this long period. So based on this data, it's actually now possible to do modeling and tell which are the most preferred sites by whales and in which seasons. So that even as you focus on conservation of these, you already have an indication of where to put more effort in case you want to patrol, in case you want to lock out certain activities such as fishing activities. You'll know which season is the right season to maybe ban fishing, for example, or which season should we focus more monitoring so that you are able to conserve and protect these animals against any vices. So similarly, when you look at this, this figure, it also shows the prediction of the likelihood of the blue whale occurrence in terms of percent chance. So when you look at the coloration of this modeled figure, the area marked in red basically shows the highest percentage that it's almost sure bet that the whales will be here on a certain and certain location. So what you have here for in this case, what you have here on this figure, you can also see the area marked in red. So these areas are the areas that these tags were deployed. When the animals were captured and the tags were deployed, or the logs were, from there, the animals can stay with those tags for as long as between, let's say, 1994 to 2008. So over that period, it's actually possible now to tell that every year, this season, this month, the whales must visit this region marked in orange, for those who can admit that this is orange. But those areas, these other areas in blue, are the areas that are not very common with these animals. And therefore, if there is any fishing, banning of fishing in certain areas, probably efforts can be put around here by patrolling these areas, or by even having observers on the ship to ensure that in case there are bycatches, those animals are released back in the ecosystem. So beside that, you also have what you call the real-time acoustic data technology, or real-time acoustic technology. So this is different from the other two in that it's based on the fact that sound travels well under the water, and therefore they have become a key source of information when it comes to animal species presence and anthropogenic activities within certain areas. So this technology basically involves deployment of acoustic sensors into appropriate location, and they typically rely on passive acoustic monitoring using what we call hydrophones. And this is a technology that has actually been even attempted, or even being tried currently in Kenya, in Malindi, where they have deployed gadgets and left them in marine protected areas. These sensors are left there, and they are able to record presence of certain marine mammals. Particularly, the reason this project was actually begun in Malindi was to actually record presence of dugongs, and among other marine animals that visit marine protected areas. But this was purposely done to record presence of dugongs. So this is a technology that is also being applied, and it's also very useful because it can record presence of animals when they visit certain habitat. So the hydrophone and recorders are commonly packaged as a freestanding unit, and they are left alone in the water for some time. It could be for days, for months, even for a year, depending on whether that gadget is able to sustain power over that long period. So with the advancement in technology, it's possible actually to have gadgets that can be left passively in the sea for so long as it's able, as long as there is no disturbance, and as long as it can sustain power for that long. So what you have on this figure is a classical example of some of the acoustic sensors that have been left in the sea What you have here, these are the acoustic sensors, and they can be left in the sea, in any part of the sea. Probably want to see how deep do certain, let's say, these are sails, how deep do they dive? Do they dive this deep? And this habitat being utilized, for example, by the seals? And when you have an acoustic sensor here, it's able to detect the presence of that a particular animal, depending on the kind of sound that they emit while they're in the sea. So they can be deployed and left at any depth. You can actually see that these are at this depth, which are these animals utilizing this habitat at that depth. So there are different types of sensors that can be left, and the idea here is to transmit. That's why you can actually see they are able to detect sounds of certain specific animals, and therefore you can actually tell that whales are visiting, seals are visiting, or whichever animal, marine mammal or marine animal for that matter, is visiting certain habitats. So the other very common technology that is also being adopted is the use of what we are calling electronic monitoring of fisheries. So conventionally, monitoring of bycatches, for example, have been done using the observer technology, or use of observers in these who are deployed in the fishing vessels. But now currently there is advancement in technology, and this advancement in technology is also complementing what the observers can actually doing, or even replacing the observers who are deployed to go and monitor whether there are bycatches in these fishing vessels. So electronic monitoring system produce estimates of marine mammals bycatch with much higher precision and possibly higher accuracy than estimate derived from the conventional sea observers. So electronic monitoring system typically use onboard cameras. So basically what we are talking about here is deployment of cameras, or popularly what we refer as CCTVs. So if there are vessels, let's say, doing fishing in our EEZ, for example, the only effort that maybe the government can do is to ensure that each vessel that is actually within this EEZ must have for example, the fisheries department can decide that they will actually be putting CCTVs on those vessels for as long as they are within the EEZ. So electronic monitoring system typically use those onboard cameras and GPSs to know where they are at any one particular moment, and sensors and data loggers to collect information on the fishing and transshipment and supply vessels. So what you have on this photo is just a classical example of what currently they are doing. What you have here is a CCTV kind of an installation that can actually monitor everything that is going on in that vessel. And therefore, in case there are bycatches, or in case there are illegal activities surrounding marine threatened species, they'll be able to monitor from the comfort of their desks offshore, or rather in the office. And therefore, they don't need observers as such, because having observers on the board is an expense, and they can also be compromised, like we shall see. So a classical example of where they are doing that is the installation of these kind of cameras on passeiners by the Seychelles Fishing Authority. So this photo you're seeing here is an installation that has been done by the Seychelles Fishing Authority. So from here, they can actually tell. You can, when you look at that photo again, you can see that it's possible to monitor and see every single detail that is going on a certain vessel without necessarily being there. And therefore, it instills discipline that they have to record, they have to give information on all the activities that is going on in that on that vessel. So what are some of the advantages of electronic monitoring vis-a-vis the conventional human observer programs? Because this technology is slowly replacing the need of having human observers on the vessels. One is that the observer effect is taken care of, such that the fishers may alter their fishing practices and gear in response to presence of human observer. When we have an observer on board, they can decide that now you're not going to use certain gear type. But when they are able to go out and do their activity without the observer being there, or even confusing the observer such that he may not be everywhere, they can actually deploy certain gear types that are not legal at that point. So the other advantage is that the observer displacement effect is also taken care of. This means that the management authority may not place observer on the vessel that are too small, for example, to accommodate just allow me to take this. I'm in class, please. Yeah? So there are moments where maybe the Kenya Fisheries Authority may choose not to, for example, deploy observers in a certain vessel, which probably they consider not to be very safe, or the vessel may be too small to accommodate additional people, and therefore, in that case, this is actually a better option because you only need to install cameras, CCTV cameras, and they'll be able to relay and act as a visual observer. So the other advantage also is that it's a common practice, especially with rogue fishermen or those who do commercial fishing, to coerce or even corrupt the observers, the human observers. And therefore, when you have this kind of installation, it's actually possible to prevent this kind of scenario where the observers are corrupted and the illegal activities could be going on, and therefore compromising the conservation of these threatened species. So the other approach that is commonly being used in trying to conserve the marine mammals is the use of spatial monitoring and reporting tool patrol. It's called smart approach. They call it spatial monitoring and reporting tool patrols. So smart is a kind of a software that is actually installed in GPSs, and it makes it possible to collect, store, and analyze ranger collected data on illegal activities or wildlife patrols, routes management action, to understand where effort should be focused and evaluate rangers' performance. So if you remember what I was talking about, biologging and telemetry, from that and combination of that together with modeling, it's actually possible to tell that certain marine mammals will be visiting our coasts in a given period or in certain months between this period and this period. So with these, when you combine that with this technology, it's possible now to direct efforts where they are needed most during certain times of the year. So basically, what this does, it helps the management. If you are the warden of marine warden of Mombasa or Kisite, you already know that dolphins will be visiting in the month of July, mostly between this period and this period, because you already have the data. You have already modeled that. So all these technologies are used in combination. They are not used in isolation. So when you combine all that, now you use the information from research, from this data, to make management decisions. You decide that we are going to deploy our rangers between this period and this period, and they have to focus their energies in a certain area. So that is what you actually do. So, and how do you ascertain that the rangers actually participated and monitored and patrolled certain areas? They must be accompanied by this gadget. They must go with their GPSs, and those GPSs must be on such that when they come back, they will not actually lie to you that we patrol these areas while they were actually lying on the beach somewhere, and only dispatch them in the morning, and they go either do their own business, lie on the beach until evening, and they come back with their boats and they tell you that we patrolled this area and everything seems to be okay. So while that, to avoid that, you actually use this smart technology to ensure that they actually go and do the actual job that they were deployed to do. So it comes with the option for a mobile data where for example, an app combined with powerful analysis and mapping interface, designed and customized by the local user. So while you are actually in the office, they'll come back with these phones or with these gadgets, and you'll be able to download all the data, and you'll be able to see where did these guys go for patrols. Did they actually do the patrols as they are claiming they did? So it's possible to actually map and show that this week we put so much effort in this region, but this region seems not to have been done properly, and therefore this is the region that we need to continue patrolling from next week or from tomorrow. So this is the kind of technology that you're talking about. You dispatch the patrol team in the field, and they will be able to come back with the information. They are not just carrying guns and threatening. They'll have gadgets that is showing where exactly they are patrolling and whether they have been successful in their patrols. The last two, the other technology that is also being used is the use of molecular techniques, and this is also. May I also mention that this technology, smart technology, is also borrowed so much from the terrestrial ecosystem. This is the technology that, for example, Kenya Wildlife Service is using, as well as Kenya Forest Service. when you hear of KFS have deployed rangers to go and patrol, let's say a forest, to check on illegal activities. Are they really doing that job? So the only way to confirm that is by using this technology, so that they map their movement. They must map their movement, so that at every one moment, you will know, you as a manager, you as a warden, you will know that there is so much concentration of effort in this area. Now we need to deploy them in another area. And that is very common in terrestrial ecosystem, where they are doing patrols for when they're monitoring for endangered species like elephants and rhinos. They know where, they can actually tell where efforts have been put and where they need to refocus more. So beside that, molecular techniques have also been used. When we capture animals, you have to get some like DNA materials. So the rapid advancement, for example, of a DNA technology is providing an expanding suite of tool to assist in marine mammal conservation. So one of the earliest and still widely used application of the genetics in marine mammal is the forensic identification of animals to species and sometimes population of the origin. And this is not a very complex technology, because even in Kenya, and to be specific, Kenya Wildlife Service is using this technology, especially on animals, in trying to identify where, for example, are we getting, where is the rhino horns coming from. When they intercept rhino horns at the port of exit or entry, at the airport or port of Mombasa, they can actually tell, are these rhinos, are these elephant ivory from our animals, or is it ivory that is on transit? So if it is on transit, they do forensic identification of those animals, because we already have the DNA for most of our animals, and therefore they can actually sequence them and also identify whether they're actually from these animals. And this technology also applies to marine mammals, where they use the same technology to identify where, for example, certain animals, marine mammals, are from which region. For animals that are restricted in a certain region, do they have the same genetic information as those in the Wio region? With that kind of technology, it's actually possible to continue conserving and knowing which animals or which mammals, marine mammals, are most endangered. Are those in the Pacific region? Are those in the Atlantic? Are those in the Indian Ocean? So it's possible depending on whether these animals are migratory in nature or they are sedentary. If they actually tell from which genetic, from the genetic information, you can actually tell whether there is a mixing of those genes from different regions. Then lastly, most importantly, beside the use of advanced technology, the other approach that is commonly being used currently is the societal engagement through what we call citizen science. Hello, are you guys still there?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
I think you have heard about, you must have come across these very, very terminology that is currently commonly used. What is citizen science? Nancy, are you there today? Nancy?
Yes.
Oh, you are there today. What do you understand by citizen science? Have you come across that terminology?
Maybe I can try, although I've not
Yeah.
come across it.
Really? It's a very common, it's highly commonly used nowadays because we are engaging in society. So what do you understand by that?
The public view of maybe
to try.
Yes.
What do you understand by that?
It is the collection of data relating to members of the general public.
Precisely, yes. So what that basically means is that you don't need very educated people or people who are specialists in a certain, let's say it's not a must that you should be for you to be engaged in data collection, right? You can just use normal people who have an interest in let's say conservation, but they are not necessarily specialists in conservation. And they can collect data. And as the name suggests, you can actually just engage the normal society in collecting information. And that is very common. That is a common approach that is being used, considering the complexity of the complexity of conservation of marine mammals. We cannot restrict ourselves to science only. We have to engage. You have to set your you have to set your net wider so that you use as many people as possible to provide information about presence of certain animals. So basically, citizen science is collection and processing of data by members of the public who may not necessarily have the scientific knowledge or credentials, if you will, but whose contribution can still aid in ongoing scientific research. Of course, it's not, you just don't leave it to the general public, but it has to be guided by some scientific principles. For example, you can come up with an app that you can use, you can actually share with the public, and they'll be able to record presence of certain animals that they come across on the beach, for example, because you may not be there practically possible for you to be everywhere. And therefore, you can use societal engagement through what you're calling citizen science. So the portable electronic devices, such as phones, gives user online accessibility to website, for example, and social media platform, and enable them to contribute data on subjects such as, we have seen a whale, we have seen a turtle, we have seen a seal, we have seen a dugong. Where did you see it? You record, key in the coordinates, and provide basic information that will be required by that app, for example. Or we have seen an injured animal, we have seen a mortality case. All that information is relayed And therefore, if that can be done across the entire coastline of Kenya, the entire coastline of Tanzania and the like, and globally, then you will be able to collect a lot of information, useful information that does not require so much scientific engagement. Only that the initial setting up of the platform must be science-based. So with quality checks, citizen science can be especially useful in gathering information on data deficient animals or very elusive animals and difficult to study marine mammals, particularly in regions of world where carrying out surveys may be logistically very difficult because of the financial challenges and among other challenges, or you do not have the expertise. The expertise could just probably be from, we have a marine mammal expert within the entire WIO region. They could just be 2 or 3 experts. So how do you collect that data in the entire coastline if you do not have marine experts? You engage citizen science or citizen or society to help you gather information. So information from social media posting can be a source of data where no any other data exists. So that is the best data that is available. And therefore, you can still use it in making conservation management decision. So a classical example of where citizen science have been used is a recent publication focusing on the Cartesian research and citizen science in Kenya. So if you will, you can actually access this and see how monitoring of the Cartesians within the coastline of Kenya is being done using citizen science platform. And this is a publication that I had promised to send you. But as you can see, this is a publication that was actually done in 2021. But that has been collected for a long period of time. But you can, if you will, if you want to read and see what citizen science is being used, how citizen science is being used, this is an open access journal, Frontiers in Marine Science. And you can actually, you'll be able to see how they are utilizing this technology to monitor marine mammals along the Kenyan coast. So if you want, you can read that for your own interest. So this is, I remember this was one of the references that I had promised to send you, but I don't need to send you because you only need to get that title, access it, because it's open access. Do you understand what open access is, Maureen?
Yes.
What is open access material?
A material that anybody can access without even paying for it.
There are no restrictions it has already been paid for. So most of the time when you publish your work in open access, not necessarily all journals that are open access, but most open access journals you pay for it to publish there. So they don't need to charge again for anybody who wants to access that information. And what is the beauty of having your work published in open access? Is there any advantage of having your piece of work in open access platform? David?
Yes.
You are slowly going to be a scientist. That's why I keep jogging your minds on these small things. What is the advantage of having your work in open access?
I think basically it will be faster for you to be recognized. You have to be recognized because everybody will have access to it.
Precisely. So the purpose of having work published in open access is to enhance readability. Because when you restrict it, you can only access it through KU website. If KU has not subscribed for it, you cannot read it, is it? But when you have it open, anybody who has an interest in that will be able to read and will be able to like now, I've shared it among all of you. There's no restriction. If you have a reading culture, all of you will be able to flip through this publication and will have an idea. For example, now you will know that I can see some of the members on this publication. I can see Nina Wambinji, that is, what do you call her? This is Maureen's mentor. We have Judith Nyunja, is also among the authors. This is also another mentor. So that way, you are able to read so much work of certain people without needing to get it from or rather paying for it. And that's the purpose of open access. So I wish to leave it there. There could be many other interventions all the time. Times are changing, and people are trying different things to ensure that these threatened species are conserved. And among them is use of such technology. We don't have many people within Kenya who are probably experts of different marine species, and that's why they have to use citizen science as one of the platforms where to continue conserving these endangered species. Is there any question up to there? Hello? So I hope you understand now most of the conservation mechanism or intervention that can be used. And we've been very exhaustive, more so in marine mammals. But one thing I wanted you to appreciate and also always know is that most of these interventions, like you have seen, can actually cut across these other species. They are not necessarily restricted, because when it comes to use of citizen science, it doesn't matter which species. As long as a species is of concern, of conservation concern, we can actually use citizen science approach to enhance conservation efforts. So now I want us to shift gears and look at conservation of marine turtles. So marine turtles is another group of threatened marine species. When you look at marine turtles, there are several species. In total, we have 7 species. We have the green turtle, and we have the pictorials of those of each of those species. That is what you have there is a green turtle. We have the olive ridley. We have loggerhead turtles. We have leatherback turtles. And we also have the hawksbill turtle. In total, we have 7 species. So among those 7 species, these 5 species, in terms of distribution, they exhibit what we call circumglobal distribution, meaning they are not restricted in certain regions. So they can be found in almost every region of the globe, meaning these are very highly migratory species, and therefore they utilize various regions or habitats around the globe. So beside that, we also have the Kimpley Ridley species. This particular one is, unlike the other 5 species, is restricted to the Gulf of Mexico and the United States. So you don't expect to have these within the WIO region or any other region. This is one of the most restricted marine turtle. So the other species that is also known to be highly restricted are the flatback flatback marine turtle. So the flatback is limited within the waters of Australia and the New Guinea. So you don't find them anywhere else, only maybe in very exceptional cases that might require some explanation. So when it comes to conservation of these species, how do you know that they actually don't visit certain areas and they're restricted within certain areas? So use of technology, like I was saying, tagging and biologging of these species, it's actually possible to know the habitat that they majorly utilize for breeding and for foraging and for whatever other purpose that they use them for. So biology and life history of marine turtle. So this particular group of species have a very unique biology and life history, considering that they utilize different habitats. They breed in different habitat from where they actually forage. So one very unique characteristic, turtle spend their lives in the sea, but the female at one point must come back from the ocean and to lay there on the beach. So that is one very unique biological characteristic or life history of marine turtle. The other thing is that the adult males undertake long distance migration. So they have to migrate from very far between the foraging ground and the nesting beaches. And they tend to display what we refer as the NATO homing. So what this basically means is that any marine turtle must come back within the area where they were nested to come and nest. So if you were born in Kenya, you must come back to Kenya to also nest there. That is what you are referring as the NATO homing. So once they are hatched, they may go and venture in any part of the sea within the tropical and subtropical region. They can go to Atlantic and Pacific, wherever. But when the time comes for them to also contribute to the next generation, the fact about their life history is that they must come back where they were born, where they were hatched, for them to also nest there and hatch others. That is one very unique characteristic about these animals. So depending on the species, female nest in a multi-year cycle of 1 to 9 years. So these are animals that take very long time to mature. But once they begin nesting, once they begin breeding, the female can do that from 1 to 9 years, meaning the same species, the same female can come and nest along the Kenyan coast at a certain area. It has to be within that region, that area. If it was actually hatched at Bamburi, Baobab Beach, or at Pirates, it will come around that area again. So that has been confirmed through tagging, that the same female came and hatched for this number of eggs, and it left. The following year, it has been shown that the same animal will still come back to the same, along within the locality or vicinity of the same area where it hatched, for it to do that. And they continue doing that for 1 to 9 years, depending on the threats that they face between that period. So the female can lay 2 to 6 clutches of eggs, each containing between 65 and 80 eggs at interval of 2 weeks. So they will come, hatch the first one, maybe leave around 100 eggs, go back to the sea, they mate and come back after 2 weeks, does it again, and they can do that up to 6 times. After that, that will be the end of that 1 year. So when you look at that, when you look at it that way, you can actually see that female can contribute to a lot of young ones. The biggest challenge is the survival of those eggs and as well as those young ones, because they do not have grooming after that. The young ones, after they have been hatched, they're actually on their own. They just drift away in the pelagic zone on their own, and that's where they face a lot of dangers. A lot of mortalities happens at that time. But similarly, when it comes to the management, the best management that we can actually do as a scientist or as a institution that are mandated to conserve endangered species. So the institution that is mandated to do that, to ensure that there is conservation of these species in Kenya, for example, is the Kenya Wildlife Service. So the best Kenya Wildlife Service can do is to protect the beaches that are known to be nesting for marine turtles. They need to identify them. They need to map them such that they protect them against coastal development, or they protect them against all other endangerments that may come as a result of, so that at least we contribute to successful hatching and laying of eggs, because beyond that, there is very minimal. But as far as conservation is concerned, that Kenya Wildlife Service can actually do, beside, of course, other interventions that we shall see that they can also contribute to. So the incubation, the other thing that is also very unique about sea turtle is that the incubation generally lasts for 8 weeks. So once the eggs have been hatched, have been laid, they will actually be incubated for 8 weeks. After 8 weeks, that's when the young hatchlings will emerge and hatch, and now go to the sea. So the temperature plays a very important role in determining the sex of the hatchlings. So the female hatchlings are produced in warmer temperatures, while the male ones are produced in the cooler nests. So depending probably on the season when there is a peak in the nesting, that will also determine, depending on the season, it will also determine the number of sex ratio of male to female. So during wet season, for example, you'd expect, probably because the temperature will be cooler, the hatchlings, most of the hatchlings will be males. But if the peak, another season that is also peak for nesting is during, let's say, January, December, November, then you'd expect that most of the hatchlings will be females. But generally speaking, the temperature should range between 25 and 35. If it falls below that, it becomes fertile. If it's above that 5 again, it's also fertile or leads to lack of hatching. When you go and assess the eggs that have been hatched, you will notice that probably there will be so many eggs that did not hatch successfully because of temperature-related issues. So most of the hatching happens at night, because that's when it's cool, and that's when they prefer to hatch, so that they are not scorched by the sun, for example, or too much temperature. So they emerge most of the hatching happens at night or when it is raining. So these are some of the aspects that you need to know if you have an interest in sea turtle nesting biology, or rather research. You would want to study marine turtles. So these are some of the facts that are very important for you to appreciate. So once they have hatched, each young turtle moves on its own. There is no grooming by the females or the males, or neither do they actually even do it in aggregation. So each moves on its own using what we call internal magnetic compass. So they will use the same to actually relocate, where once they mature after 2 or 3 decades, they will need to come back to the same beach to also nest there. So young turtles passively drifts in the open ocean for periods of years up to 20 to 30 years. So the growth rate usually is very slow, with most species requiring between 20 and 30 to mature. So once they have left the beach, very likely for them to come back to the same beach, it will take another 20 to 30 years. So the older juveniles of most of the species move into development or habitat, and eventually into adult foraging habitat. So marine turtles often display fidelity to foraging habitat as well as the nesting beaches. And this is what we are calling natal homing. The same areas where they were hatched, they'll come back to the same beach. But they also prefer they also have a foraging habitat, especially the green turtles that are known to be herbivores. They actually tend to forage mostly in the seagrass habitat of certain areas. So what are some of the key characteristics that differentiate different species from one another? So we have seen that there are we have 7 different species of sea turtle. So at least when you look at the photos that I have displayed, you must have seen some physical features that can actually differentiate one species from another. But you, as a student or as a scientist, would want to know what are some of the key features or characteristics that differentiate one species from the other. So when you look at leatherback, for example, one very unique characteristic about these particular species is that it's the only species that is known to feed on jellyfish and related prey. And it's actually the world's largest marine turtle. Very massive. The mature ones measuring up to, especially the males, up to 1,000 kgs. So this is a massive animal. So the other characteristic about leatherbacks is that they are mostly migratory of all the marine mammals. It's the most migratory, making a trans-oceanic crossing between Atlantic and Pacific. So those that have been tagged have been shown to be migrating very long distance. Probably because of size, it's able to also venture into distant habitats. So the other characteristic that is very unique about this particular species is the features. So when you look at the carapace, it has a flexible carapace with 5 distinct ridges, and they have no scales like most of the other species. So when you look at this, they have this what I'm calling the ridges, right? And usually they have 5 ridges, and you can actually count them as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So when you look at it closely, the actual species, you can actually, this is what we are referring as the ridges. And most of them, when you look at them, beside them looking very big, they also have those 5 ridges. The other characteristic is that their carapace, these carapace is this shell, is usually tapered, and it's leathery in texture, meaning or it's flexible. So in terms of color, it is dark gray in color, like you can see on this photo, or black, and it has some white pale spots. If you look at it closely, you will notice that it has some white or pale spots. So, like I said earlier, it's actually the largest among the species, but females are usually smaller as compared to male. So in terms of the size, how long it is, it can measure up to almost 2 meters. So you can imagine an animal, 2 meters carapace, it means it should be more than 2 meters from tail to head. So the other species, the hawksbill, what is so unique about this particular species? The hawksbill is a medium-sized turtle, usually weighing 60 to 80 kgs, with a carapace measuring only half of what leatherback measures. So one very unique characteristic about hawksbill is that they specialize in coral reef and sponges and other invertebrates. So while the other one feeds on jellyfish and the like, and the maybe green turtle feeds on the seagrass, so this particular one specializes in the coral reef and sponges. So if you want to, the most likely area or habitats that you're likely to come across the hawksbill is within the reef habitats. So this particular species is found throughout the world, especially the tropical ocean, and to a lesser extent, you also find them in subtropical waters. So on numerous accounts, they have been documented in abundance in Atlantic Ocean, Indian Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. So some of the features, the physical features that differentiate them from the rest, they have. What that means is that when you look at their shell, you can actually count 1, 2, 3, 4. Usually, most they only have a pair of those lateral shells. Secondly, they also have 2 pair of prefrontal scales that you can see here. Here they have 1 and 2. They have of that. Again, when you look at it closely, their shells are also the shell scales are also overlap. Their physical feature, they have up closely, you notice that it looks like it has a beak. Then when you look at their juveniles and the mature one is usually very variable, but the adult ones color ranges from orange, brown to yellow, like you can see on this photo. So in terms of size, usually weighs between 85 to 85 kgs and a shell of approximately 1 meter. Then you have the loggerhead, and the unique feature about this, as the name suggests, it's about its head. It has a very big head. Probably that's where it derives its name from. This particular species is found around the world in mostly in temperate, subtropical, and occasionally in tropical waters. Loggerheads are known to occupy numerous nearshore and offshore habitat during their lives, and are thus subjected to a lot of multiple human-made threats. Like you can see on this photo, this is a species that has been caught. But if you look closely, you'll notice that this particular one has a tag on it, and therefore probably it's one of the species that has been caught and it's being returned because of there is some concern about the data that is actually relaying. So the other unique characteristic about the loggerheads is that they are omnivorous, meaning they consume different. They can feed on they are herbivore, and they're also carnivorous. So they consume mollusks, crabs, jellyfish, and that. So they're mixed feeders, unlike these are the ones that are more or less specialized in nature. In terms of the features, unlike the hawksbill, this one has 5 pair of lateral scutes. So when you count them, you'll notice that it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when you look at them, they also look very symmetrical. They actually divided almost equally. The carapace is usually longer than wider. When you look at the length from here to here and from here to here, most of the time, it's usually longer and then it is wider. So the color, as you can see from this photo, is usually red brown to brown, and it's also the most largest among besides the leatherback and the green turtle. It's also quite huge mammal turtle, measuring up to 200 kgs and with a length of 1.2 meters. So the most unique characteristic about this easily distinguished from other turtles in that it has a broad head, measuring up to 25 centimeters. So when you look at that turtle as compared to these other turtles, compared to its body size, it has a bigger head, and probably that's where it derives its name from. So the green turtle, most common, when you talk of the green turtle, most of the time when you say mikoko, the first thing that comes to your mind often is the Rhizophorum coronata. So when you talk of the turtles, most of the time we associate turtles. The common one, the most common one is the green turtle. The term green refers to the color of its fat, unlike not its carapace. Like you can see here, it of course not green as the name suggests, but it's the color of its fat that basically it derives its name from that. It's distributed throughout the tropics and subtropics, meaning it's highly distributed. To a lesser extent, also they venture as far as in temperate waters, meaning you can find them in the part of the Atlantic and other regions. So these particular in nature, meaning they prefer grazing, particularly on sea grasses and on various species of algae, mainly in the tropical coastal waters. So it's also highly migratory. As you can see, it's ventures in both tropics and subtropic. So they can migrate between the breeding and the foraging ground, which can be thousands of kilometers apart. Because if, like I said, they have a notohoming, all sea turtles have what we call notohoming, meaning that even if they are breeding or their foraging grounds is in, let's say in Indonesia or wherever, and they were hatched in Kenya, they'll have to migrate all the way from Indonesia grounds all the way to Kenya to come and breed here. So what is unique features that differentiate them from the rest? One, they have 4 pair of lateral scales, like you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. But probably how different are they from the hawksbill? Unlike the hawksbill, they have 1 pair of prefrontal pair. This one has 1 pair, and that's how you can easily differentiate them from the other species. They do not have, their scales are not overlapping shell scales. Again, the hawksbill, you notice that it has a beak, and that's how probably it also derives its name from. But this one has a round face. And when you open its mouth, it has a serrated jaws, probably that helps in its herbivory nature. So juveniles have got different color patterns, but adults are usually dark gray to green in color. This is the second largest among the sea turtles in terms of weight, weighing around 230 and with a length of 1.2 to 1.3 meters. Olive ridley, this is the world's most abundant turtle, meaning it's widely distributed. It is the smallest, though, of the marine turtles, weighing between 30 to 50 kgs, with a carapace length of 60 to 72 centimeters. The other thing is that the olive ridley is Pacific distributed. Their Pacific ridley, they are smaller than their Atlantic counterparts. We have another type of ridley. The unique characteristic about this particular species is that it has 6 pair of lateral scutes. When you look at these scales, they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sometimes it's 6. When you look at them, I say the other ones are more symmetrical. But when you look at the scales of these species, they are actually asymmetrical, meaning when you look at, for example, this one, you will notice that this side is less. It could have so many on this side and less on this side. And when you look at the way they are meeting, it's not very symmetrical in nature. So when the other thing is that when you look at the carapace, the general shape of the carapace, it's nearly circular in nature. And you can actually see that even from this photo, you can see that it looks more of a circular shell. They are limited, very rarely can't be beyond, you rarely find them beyond 13 degrees north of the equator. The juvenile color is charcoal gray in color, but adult color is usually dark gray to green. And like I already mentioned, they are among the smallest, weighing up only around 50 kgs, with a carapace, or rather, if you will, the shell measuring around 70 centimeters. Lastly, we have, of course, 2 more. We have the 2 types of Ridley. We have the olive Ridley is relatively small turtle, weighing around 50 as the 2 Ridleys, but they have very differentiating. Ridley is restricted to the Gulf of Mexico and U.S. Atlantic Ocean. They are usually light olive green, so it's so the Kemp's Ridley is also the most geographically restricted of all the marine turtles. I mean, it's only 2 species that are distributed around the world, and you rarely find this particular one 16 degrees north of south. So there is one in the north restricted to the north, and the other one restricted to the south of the equator. So what is so unique about this particular one? It has 5 lateral scales, meaning we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you rarely find more than 6, unlike the olive Ridley. So the carapace is more round. The other one is, we saw it's also circle, but this one is very round, unlike the olive Ridley. It's actually more round than the other Ridley. So the juvenile color is also charcoal gray. The adult color is usually gray to green, and almost. So they are, other than the size, other than the carapace shape, and where they are distributed in terms of their preferred locations, they are more or less have the same kind of characteristic in terms of size and the color. Then lastly, the flatback. So the flatback breed and nest only in Australia. So they are residents of Australian, can never find them anywhere else. So it's a medium-sized turtle weighing up to olive gray carapace, measuring around 90 centimeters. So one very unique characteristic about this, other than a hard carapace, it's likely even likely to bleed, meaning it has a very soft carapace, just like the leatherback. So these particular species are largely restricted, like I said, in Australia, continental waters, where they forage and in shallow bottom habitat for soft corals and jellyfish and other soft-bodied prey such as the sea cucumber and the sea pen. So they are restricted range because they're only restricted within the Australia. It also means that they are extremely vulnerable to habitat loss, especially during their breeding season. So I think with that, you'll be able now, should we have a chance to one of the sites where they do, you're likely to see some sea turtle is the Watamu Turtle Watch. That's where they manage those turtles that require attention, such as those that are sick, those that are have been caught through bycatch. They rehabilitate them there and then they release them back. So if we get a chance, if we're able to do the visit, this is one of the guaranteed areas where you'll have an opportunity to see different maybe species of a sea turtle that they may have within their facility. And occasionally, you can also liaise with the Kenya Wildlife Service for those who have a chance, and you'll be able to maybe know where they have active nesting sites and when they're expecting nesting seasons. And during those periods, you can also use that opportunity to see different species that visit our coastline. So in terms of conservation, we say that we have 7 different species of marine turtles. So among these 7, 6 of them are already listed as threatened by the IUCN, as well as by the CITES and the CMS, Convention on Conservation of Migratory Species. So when you look at all the species that I have mentioned, the first 3, leatherback, hawksbill, and Kemp's Ridley turtle, they are all classified by the IUCN as critically endangered. And so is the CITES. The CITES has also enlisted them in Appendix 1, meaning you cannot trade on these species. And they have also been listed again by the Convention on Conservation of Migratory Species in Appendix 1 and 2. Then the other green turtle, loggerhead species are also classified as endangered, but they are all in Appendix 1. While flatback turtle, that is restricted within Australia, it's data deficient, meaning it could still fall within the threatened category. But because a species that is data deficient, we do not actually know what the status is. So what effort is being done to continue conserving these species? So to safeguard the marine turtle from eventual extinction, like you have seen, all of them are threatened. All of them are threatened. Some critically endangered, others endangered, and only probably one is vulnerable, which is the olive ridley. So currently, just like with other threatened species, we have a group through IUCN that is specialized in sea turtle. So this group is referred as the Marine Turtle Specialist Group, just like we have Marine Mammal specialist group, just like we have the grouper specialist group and the like. So we have a group that is dedicated for conservation of the marine turtles. So the aim of this group, the aim of this specialist group is to draft some global strategy that can be used for conservation of the marine turtles. So I wish to stop it there. Next week, we'll be looking at some of the main threats. Some of the main threats facing the marine turtles globally. And we might also look at some of the efforts. For example, look at Kenyan scenario. What is Kenya doing in particular in terms of trying to conserve the marine turtles, and what are the major threats that are facing marine turtles, particularly within the Kenyan coastline, and then look at the entire globe and see what are the major threats, as well as the possible solution that are being adopted or can be adopted to ensure that these threatened species are protected, to protect them from getting extinct. Because like you can see, these are species that are very likely to slip into extinction if efforts are not done. But there is a lot of global efforts that are being put, especially with the invention of this specialist group. They are putting a lot of efforts in terms of conservation. So what I would actually advise, even as you exit from this course, there is actually need to start developing certain interest. You start checking what could be your area of interest. Because when it comes also to, if you decide to continue being in the field of science and research, it's usually good to start focusing on species that are charismatic in nature, in that they are likely, when you focus your, for example, your research on sea turtles, you have better chances of funding than a person who is focusing on a more general species. So I would encourage many to actually start thinking in those lines. I'm not saying that you must do sea turtle, but you need to start thinking in those lines so that you have better chances of advancing your career. Is there any question up to there? Hello, hello. Sometimes you can't tell whether you are together or some people slept or you. Are you guys?
Yes.
You are there?
Yes.
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 Sounds like some of you are just waking up. So kuna swali mpaka hapo? So among you, was there anybody focusing on sea turtle in terms of project? I don't remember. Was there? Haya. Now, see you next week because naonekana mutaki kuongea na mimi leo. Okay, and the last assignment announcement as you leave, in case you have not submitted your work, is Isaac Rimba on board? He's never there. I know people who are here and who are never here. Mkijikuta muko hata kwa mtihani, msiulize kwa nini. Is Isaac with us? So, the remaining time, I encourage you to start focusing on look at some of the strategies that we have already looked at for other species that can also be applied in enhancing conservation of the sea turtle. There are some that could be unique for the marine turtles, but quite a number can also be used on marine turtles. So because we have a challenge with our platform, from time to time, I'm not able to access it. The reference materials will be posted to your common email, so you can access them from there. I'll check whether the platform is still working. If it is not working, I will post them on the. I'll post them on that platform. So with those few and many long remarks, see you tomorrow.
Where's him left?
Wase niliwaambia mnipe ndio niongee. So kama mleti malipo siongee. Juu hata mimi nishamaliza project.
Uko hivyo, kujua kaa hivyo.
Mtajuana wenyewe na tamu.
Jongelesha. Kani ni leg.
Ringeni tu.